Imagine a crime scene so chaotic, so widespread, that investigators actually run out of standard evidence markers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they literally have to leave over 100 of them just scattered across a city street.
That's wild.
Right. Now, imagine that scene isn't, an active war zone overseas, but right here in an American city
Yeah.
during a holiday weekend that's specifically meant to celebrate freedom and community.
Right, which is it's a massive disconnect.
Exactly. Welcome back to PoliticallyX. You are listening to a special edition of our deep dive, where we take a stack of sources and basically extract the insights you need to stay informed. Today, we're looking at a very intense piece of commentary by Jesse Lee Peterson,
Yeah, we are.
and it's focused specifically on the really devastating violence in Chicago over the Juneteenth holiday weekend.
And, before we really get into the mechanics of what happened, I think we need to establish the rules of the road for today's deep dive.
Definitely. It's important.
Because the source material we're unpacking today is highly politically charged, so we want to make it absolutely clear to you, our listener, that we are not, endorsing the viewpoints or the rhetoric of the original source material.
Right. Not at all.
We are strictly here to impartially report on the content and unpack the underlying arguments. And our mission today is to examine these claims through an America First centrist lens.
Yeah, and let's define what we mean by that America First centrist lens before we go any further. Because, well, if you're listening and wondering what that actually looks like in practice, it basically means we're prioritizing domestic safety and pragmatic governance over any partisan allegiance.
Exactly. It's stripping away the red and blue jerseys entirely.
Right, and just asking the fundamental questions, are the streets safe? Is the local government doing its basic job? We're looking at results, not just the rhetoric.
Because, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, the basic social contract of any functioning society is that citizens have a right to be safe in their own neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And when that breaks down, we just have to look at the why and the how.
So let's just get right into it. Peterson's commentary, it starts by drawing this really sharp contrast between the public, performative aspects of Juneteenth and the grim reality on the ground.
He does, yeah.
He's highly critical of the holiday. I mean, he goes so far as to call it a waste of time, noting that slavery ended, over a century and a half ago. But what really stands out is his critique of the performative politics surrounding it. He points to this very specific event in Atlanta to illustrate his point.
He does. And according to the source, at this Atlanta event, participants were dressed in tattered clothing, wearing fake blood stains.
Wait, fake blood?
Yeah, fake blood. And walking barefoot in chains, carrying metal bowls down this red carpet-style procession.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and Peterson actually labels this display as evil.
Which is, that's a really strong word to use. But he's using it to highlight a specific mechanism, right? His argument is that this kind of highly theatrical reenactment is actively designed to deceive the next generation.
Yeah, essentially.
He claims it's a tool to keep people locked in this narrative of perpetual victimhood, basically for personal gain, specifically to harvest votes and secure funding.
Right. It's like the commodification of trauma, in his view. He's arguing that these really emotional, highly produced public displays, they act as a smokescreen.
Well, a smokescreen for what's actually happened.
Exactly. And to drive this point home, he points to politicians participating in these events. He specifically calls out Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger.
Oh, right, the dancing video.
Yeah, he notes she appeared in a video dancing on stage with a DJ at a public Juneteenth celebration.
Which he obviously views as pure pandering.
Totally.
And this brings us to sort of the core friction of this source material. Because you have this visual of politicians, happily dancing on a stage, putting on this show of solidarity. But if you pan the camera just a few degrees away from that stage, it's like politicians happily dancing in the front yard while the house behind them is actively burning down to the ground.
That is exactly the analogy, because look at what CBS News reported for that extended holiday weekend in Chicago.
The numbers are staggering.
They are. 8 people killed, 38 people injured.
I mean, when you put those two things side by side, the celebratory dancing and those grim statistics of 8 dead and 38 injured, the disconnect is just jarring.
It's massively jarring. And Peterson uses that disconnect to basically argue that the political class is fundamentally detached from the reality of the actual citizens they're supposed to represent.
Because when a city sees those kinds of numbers over a single weekend, It fundamentally changes the conversation, you know. It goes from, oh, we have a few bad apples to we are looking at a systemic collapse.
Yeah.
Let's move away from the broad statistics for a second and look at the specific incidents the source cites, because it really illustrates the sheer scale of the chaos. We are talking about ground zero of a public safety failure.
The specifics are what make this so chilling, because they show the mechanics of how a community really loses control.
Right. Like Friday night.
Yeah. The source details a shooting on Friday night near 95th Street and Wentworth. This was a mass drive-by shooting.
Not mass drive-by.
Yeah. A red SUV pulled up alongside a large crowd. 2 people inside opened fire into that crowd and just drove off.
God.
13 people were injured, with victims ranging from 17 all the way to 47 years old.
And here is the detail that completely, like, it just stops you in your tracks.
Right.
The source mentions there were over 100 evidence markers left at the scene.
Right.
When if you're listening to this, really think about the logistics of that for a second. An evidence marker isn't just placed there for the fun of it.
Yeah.
It marks a shell casing, a bullet fragment, a pool of blood, a discarded weapon.
Right. So when a crime scene requires over 100 markers, that is not your standard criminal altercation.
Right.
That is a war zone metric. It indicates indiscriminate, overwhelming, and sustained gunfire into a dense crowd of human beings. It's terrifying.
It is. It shows a complete and utter disregard for human life. And importantly, zero fear of immediate police reprisal.
Zero fear. And that brazenness didn't even stop on Friday.
No, it didn't.
Because the source moves to Saturday night, detailing an incident on the west side near Cicero and Quincy. An 18-year-old boy was shot and killed. But the mechanism of this specific crime is what really stands out to me, because he was shot and killed inside a home.
Inside a home. Yeah.
And officers arrested a 17-year-old boy at the scene and recovered a gun.
Which highlights this really terrifying escalation, because when we talk about public safety, I mean, the implicit agreement is that the streets might have risks, sure, but the home is a sanctuary.
Right, you're supposed to be safe there.
Exactly. When the violence penetrates the physical walls of a home, the psychological safety net of a community entirely disintegrates.
Totally.
Furthermore, the ages here as a 17-year-old allegedly killing an 18-year-old, it underscores Peterson's claim about the next generation being set up for absolute destruction.
We're looking at a pipeline where youth are both the sole perpetrators and the sole victims.
But then we get to late Saturday night, and this incident in North Lawndale is the one that really encapsulates what happens when local infrastructure just completely surrenders.
Yeah, the North Lawndale one is incredible.
Near Christiana and Douglas Boulevard, there was this massive gathering. 3 people were injured, including a 19-year-old who literally had to approach the police himself, saying he was shot in the groin and the forearm.
Right. And the police response, or well, rather the forced limitation of their response, is a crucial data point here.
Because they couldn't do anything.
The source notes that the crowd was so massive, so chaotic, and, quote, out of control, that the police literally could not track down the shooter.
They were blocked, just blocked by the sheer mass of the chaos.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, during this exact incident, a Chicago Police Department squad car ended up taking fire. It got a bullet hole right in its front hood.
From an America First centrist perspective, this is the ultimate red flag. I mean, the primary non-negotiable contract of any local government is to maintain a monopoly on force.
Right.
The government is supposed to be the sole entity authorized to maintain order. So when a police force is pushed back by the sheer size of an unruly crowd...
And their own vehicles are taking collateral damage from stray bullets.
Exactly. The infrastructure hasn't just surrendered, it has completely collapsed in that specific moment and area.
I mean, if you're a citizen watching your local police effectively retreat because they're outmatched by a crowd, that's not just a temporary crime wave.
No.
That's a systemic failure. Which brings us to, frankly, the most uncomfortable question in this whole deep dive. When a system collapses like this, you have to look at the architects of that system.
You do.
Who is accountable?
And Peterson points the finger squarely at local leadership. He specifically targets the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker.
And he uses very specific demographic details to sort of dismantle what he views as the traditional political scapegoats.
Yeah, he's very intentional about it.
He points out that the mayor of Chicago is black. He brings up Governor Pritzker's background, citing Wikipedia to state that Pritzker is of Ukrainian Jewish descent.
He's doing that to proactively cut off counterarguments. His assertion is that you cannot blame this violence on, quote, the white man, or some historical white Anglo-Saxon power structure.
Because those aren't the demographics of the current leadership.
Exactly. Furthermore, he argues you cannot blame this bloodshed on slavery, reiterating that the institution ended over 150 years ago.
So if you can't blame historical injustices, Peterson asks, who do you blame?
Right.
His answer is the individuals pulling the triggers, obviously, but also the local leadership that allows this environment to just exist.
Yeah.
But here is where Peterson makes a claim that I really struggle to wrap my head around. Because he doesn't just say the mayor and the governor are incompetent.
He goes way further.
He claims they actually rejoice in the chaos.
Yeah.
He says they want the community fighting and out of control.
It is arguably the most provocative, cynical pillar of his entire commentary.
See, wait, I had to push back on that.
Sure.
Because walk me through the actual logic there. On the surface, a high crime rate usually ends political careers. It doesn't extend them.
You would think so, yes.
Right. You're telling me a mayor or a governor looks at a weekend with 8 dead and 38 injured and thinks, great, my job security is locked in. Why would any elected official actively benefit from their city looking like a war zone?
Well, to understand Peterson's argument here, you really have to look at the political science of crisis management.
Okay.
And specifically how municipal funding actually works. Think of it like this. It's like a mechanic who quietly unplugs your spark plugs every time you bring your car in for a routine oil change.
Okay, so the car runs terribly when you leave.
Right. And you immediately bring it back to that exact same mechanic.
Oh, I see.
They plug the wire back in, they get to play the hero for fixing the terrible problem, and they guarantee you'll be back paying them again next month.
Wow.
Peterson is arguing that a perpetual state of crisis is basically the fuel for the modern political machine.
Ah, so it's entirely about dependency.
Exactly. When a community is in perpetual crisis, local governments can declare emergencies.
Which opens the checkbook.
Yes, that unlocks massive amounts of state and federal funding. We're talking grants for violence interruption, community revitalization budgets, emergency task forces.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars flow into cities because of poverty and crime.
Right.
Peterson's argument is that if the streets were completely safe, peaceful, and self-sustaining, these specific political apparatuses would just lose their funding and their platform entirely.
He literally says, what would they do with themselves? They'll fade away into nothing.
Precisely. If there is no crisis, the citizen doesn't need the politician to save them. So the source is asserting that the political class relies on a baseline level of dysfunction and division to justify its own bloated budgets and just, maintain its grip on power.
I mean, if you're listening to this and wondering why your own local taxes keep going up while the safety of your neighborhood seems to go down, this is the exact paradox Peterson is trying to point out.
Yeah.
It is a brutally cynical view of public service, honestly, but it provides a framework to understand what otherwise looks like completely irrational governance.
And it perfectly sets up the final piece of this puzzle, because if local leaders are either unable to stop the violence or, as the source claims, secretly unwilling to stop it because the crisis serves their power structure, what is the alternative?
Right. How does it end?
Exactly.
This brings us to the federal offer and the incredible friction between national intervention and local political pride. The source highlights the reaction of Donald Trump to this Juneteenth violence.
Yeah, early that Sunday morning, Trump took to social media to react to the shootings in what he called Chi-Town.
And he didn't just, offer condolences. He explicitly questioned why Governor Pritzker wasn't calling him for help.
Right.
Trump offered to send in the National Guard to make Chicago a safe city, comparing the potential intervention to actions that had been taken to restore order in Washington, D.C., he essentially threw down a gauntlet saying, I can send the military resources to stop this today, but you won't request it.
Which brings up the intricate mechanics of federalism. Generally, the federal government cannot just deploy the National Guard into a city for domestic law enforcement without the state governor's requests.
Right, outside of something crazy like the Insurrection Act.
Exactly. The state has to ask for the help.
So just consider the political chess game happening here. If you are a governor or a mayor and your city is literally bleeding, I mean, we are talking about 100 evidence markers at a single intersection, squad cars being shot up, why wouldn't you pick up the phone?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why would you actively refuse federal resources that could instantly stabilize the streets?
Well, according to Peterson's logic, it comes down to political pride and preserving that status quo of power.
Of course.
For local Democratic leaders to accept federal military help from Donald Trump, who is obviously their primary political rival, It would be the ultimate public admission of total failure.
It would be a broadcast to the world saying, we cannot govern our own citizens. So
Exactly.
they would rather manage the decay than let a rival fix it.
That is Peterson's exact claim. He argues that these leaders prioritize their political ego over human lives.
Wow.
Accepting peace brought about by a political rival would disrupt their narrative. They need the citizens divided, and they need to be seen as the only valid solution, even if their solution clearly isn't working.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, we started today by looking at Juneteenth, a holiday intended for celebration, which, through the lens of this source material, became a tragic focal point in Chicago.
Yeah, we examined Peterson's severe critiques, from the performative, theatrical nature of political celebrations that he argues commodify trauma.
To the grim mechanical reality of a police force being pushed back by chaotic crowds.
Right. And we explored the deeply cynical yet fascinating political science theory that local leaders might actually utilize perpetual crisis to secure funding and ensure voter dependency.
The mechanic unplugging the spark plugs.
Exactly.
And finally, we looked at the ultimate political standoff. A city in distress, a federal offer of the National Guard, and a local leadership allegedly refusing that help out of sheer political pride.
Yeah.
It matters because the fundamental right of every American citizen, regardless of your zip code, is to live in a safe community. The America First centrist lens demands that when a 17-year-old is killed in their own home or a crowd shoots at police, we stop looking at political intent and start demanding actual results.
Absolutely. The system has to be accountable for the reality on the ground, not the rhetoric on the stage.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've talked deeply about local leaders refusing federal help to save face. But consider the inverse. If a local municipal government repeatedly demonstrates an absolute inability to secure basic public safety during major events, if the social contract is entirely broken, at what point does the federal government have a moral obligation to step in, even if the local leaders refuse to ask for help?
That's a heavy question.
It is. Where is the line between state sovereignty and the basic human right to walk down your street without stepping over evidence markers?
It's a profound question that challenges the very foundation of how our republic balances power against the value of human life.
And it is exactly the kind of question we need to be asking. Thank you for joining us for this special deep dive. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to PoliticallyX so you never miss a deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.